Hi everyone, it's Michael, and it's already time for the September 2020 Orchid Collection update. So many beautiful and exciting and unexpected things are happening with so many of my plants, and a lot of very unexpected plants, to be honest with you. So I'm so excited to take you in for a closer look and show you. In regard to my grow system, nothing has changed that's different from last month, so I'm continuing to flush all of the containers once to twice a month. I'm watering with a dilute nutrient solution, and I'm continuing to mist the plants every morning, and that's working very, very well for me. Now, one change that I do want to highlight is that I started to finally grow using the Mars Hydro LED grow light, and oh my gosh, such a game changer. I actually want to cut away and show you exactly how I have it installed because it's so cute and the plants are just responding so beautifully. I mean, just look how darling this little grow space is. Now for cleaner presentation, I actually didn't use the hoists. I just went ahead and attached it directly to the wall. And then I got this adorable little panel cover to hide the cord. For whatever reason, that just makes the presentation look nicer to me and I just feel better about it. But the plants are responding so positively. The big point of difference between what I'm doing with this grow light and the others that I have is I've placed this one significantly higher. And it was also easier to place this one higher because it's such a narrow, compact strip. And it really allows the plants to stretch and reach. And I think that's a modification I want to make with the rest of my grow system too. I think all of the plants would respond better to a stronger source of directionality. I think the plants will grow taller. I think they'll grow more upright and more organized. So that's really, really beautiful. But just get a load of this. Now, we're of course going to get into each of these individual plants as this update goes on, but look how many beautiful things are in bloom. It is just so stunning. So many buds on the way. It's just a really, really great time. And I will of course include the link for the Mars Hydro LED grow light in the description below. Isn't my little grow space so cute? I'm so excited about it. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and talk about the plants that have something new, different, and interesting happening this month. All right, my friends, jumping in with number one in the collection, we have my NoID mini Phalaenopsis, and it's just such a joy to see this one in spike because, again, it was the very first orchid I ever had. It's an absolute miracle that I didn't kill it before it got to this point. And something kind of interesting is this is actually two orchids. I don't know if you can see, but there is one mini phal right there, and then it developed this basal keiki. And I thought for a long time that I needed to separate them, but now it's just two plants that are growing kind of side by side. It doesn't seem to be harming either of them, and they've both given me a flower spike. So this is just such a fun story, such a great journey that this plant has gone through, and it's just very, very satisfying to see it in spike. Now we're going to jump to number 11. This is my Psychopsis Mendenhall Hildos, and as you can see, it has one beautiful flower spike giving me one beautiful bloom, but it's about to have a sibling spike because this one is just quickly shooting up a beautiful little flower spike. And I don't think this will be the last flower spike this one adds. In fact, I think that I can expect two more very, very soon. You can see this is a brand new growth that's maturing really quickly, and then over this way, there's another brand new growth that's maturing very quickly. As soon as these two growths put out a mature pseudobulb, they're gonna spit out a flower spike too, and they're gonna do it quickly. So this is just really wonderful to see develop. Now jumping to number 13 in the collection, this is my NoID Phragmipedium, and this one has also seen quite a journey. This struggled for a very long time. I thought it was gonna die. But after I added a top dressing of sphagnum moss, it started to do much better and put down a more expansive root system. And then with the addition of LED light, it really took off. And you can tell because look how close it is to giving me the full bloom. The flower spike is developing so beautifully. I'm so excited about this. And after all of the excitement for the first fan to put out a flower spike, look who is doing the same. There is another little flower spike on its way coming in. I couldn't be more pleased. This plant has, again, it was one of the earlier ones in my collection and saw a lot of mistreatment. This one endured Physan experiments and all sorts of nonsense. So it's just so exciting to see it finally arrive. I'm so curious to see what this bloom will look like because I've never seen this plant in flower. I bought it when it was just in vegetative growth. I've never seen a flower spike. It didn't have an ID tag. So I'm really curious to discover who you are. But you know, those moments where you get to meet the plant for the first time officially, there's nothing like it. It brings me the most joy. Now we're gonna jump to, you know, this plant is just a titan. Number 16 in the collection, this is my Catacetum Nicolasa Tavras Dapper Dots. And I'm sorry, I have to come all the way out so you can see what it's doing. Look at this. This is so ridiculous. I really thought, for whatever reason, that because these roots weren't making direct contact with the medium, that the new growths were gonna come in super sickly and only partially formed. But that's just not the case. Look at the size of this new growth. Are you seeing this? And when you compare that to the size of the old growths, it's actually quite comparable. This plant is doing so phenomenally well. It is so unruly. There's no shelf that can accommodate its growth. And again, this is one of the reasons that I'm so excited for the new LED grow setup. I think having significantly elevated the source of light is going to help with the directionality of this plant, of course, after I divide it. But for the time being, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's stressing me out, but it's also kind of charming how unruly it is. Now this plant has produced flower spikes and then aborted them 2 years in a row. So I think I'm gonna try a slightly different approach this year and use a bloom booster leading up to bloom season, which is coming up soon. So I'm gonna keep you posted on this one. I'm not quite sure what will happen, but wow, what an experiment. Now jumping to number 18 in the collection, this is my Zygopedilum. I get so many requests for updates on this one, and I don't often provide them because I'm so unsure of how it's doing. It really started to do a lot better after I converted it to strictly sphagnum moss, or at least a really significant top dressing of sphagnum moss. And it put out all of these beautiful new growths. Those new growths matured pseudobulbs. But now I see some of the leaves are dying back. I think that's in part due to a nutrient deficiency. But I do think I'm just gonna, the next time you see this plant, it's gonna look much different. I am so annoyed with how, I don't know, asymmetrically it's growing. I'm so annoyed by the fact that the new roots aren't gonna be able to access the pot. So I think I might just divide it and put it in water culture. And I know that someone's gonna have something negative to say about that, but I just wanna try, okay? Let me do my experiment. Now we're gonna move on to number 22 in the collection. This is my Maxillaria tenefolia. And similarly, I think this one just needs to be divided. Look how willfully it's growing an entirely second plant. It is just, it really wants to live on its own. This one wants to get divorced from this one. So I think I'm just gonna facilitate that process. I might gift the division to one of my friends. I honestly, the reason I haven't divided it yet is because, again, I just don't have the time to care for any more plants. So creating a second one for myself is just, it seems counterintuitive. But it definitely wants to be divided and it definitely wants to live its own life. And I do think that this is a really great opportunity to try the Maxillaria in water culture. You know, and that's kind of how I've been handling this potential transition. I'm not gonna transition all of my plants to water culture, but just to see how they would do, taking a division seems like a much less risky option than putting your entire plant in water culture, shocking it, and then seeing it die. So I might do some experimentation with it. I just don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but you can tell that plant wants to be on its own. Now we're gonna jump to number 31 in the collection. Look at this beauty. This is my Oncidium Wild Willy Pacific Bingo, and just look at this gorgeous flower spike. Oh, how stunning. Now I will do a bloom profile for this one so we can look at it more closely, but this one had a series of ups and downs. It also saw a lot of mistreatment and has really just bounced back. This is its, I think it's third time reblooming for me, but this one is just absolutely stunning. It's leopard, it's maroon, it's yellow. It's so bizarre and peculiar and just gorgeous. So I couldn't be more pleased to see this one in bloom. Now we're gonna jump to another Titan in the collection. This is my SVO Black Pearl, and just get a load of this Fred Clarkiara. It is so sizable, especially when you compare it to previous years. I had this growth that I did 2 years ago, this growth from last year, and then this one just completely eclipses them both. It is so robust, it is so gigantic, and it really seems to have fared super well ever since I resolved the spider mite issue with it. Now you can see the dieback here, but that's because this plant got so tall so quickly that it actually touched the light source in the grow station. So I'm not worried about this yellowing because it's totally my fault. And again, having a grow setup with the elevated light source is really going to positively impact how this develops in the future. But it's been a very, very happy grow season, and I'm excited to see how this one spikes. It has the most gorgeous black flowers. I've never seen it in bloom, but I've seen pictures, and I'll just be so overjoyed when I finally get to meet those flowers. Quick little update on number 46. This is my Oncidium Twinkle White Pink. It is just so cute and so happy. You can see it really successfully bloomed last season. It gave me 3 flower spikes, and it looks like it's gonna do the same again, potentially even giving me 6 flower spikes this year, because the growths are so vigorous and so happy, and they're coming in so quickly that I think that they might all double spike, just like this one did last year. So this one just seems to be doing really well. It is really reliable and doesn't need much from me to do great. So I really have come to appreciate this plant. And something very, very unexpected, this is my Miltoniopsis bertfieldeileen, and never in a million years did I think that this would rebloom for me. This requires cooler growing climates. It just requires an environment that I'm not particularly well equipped to provide. And I really thought I was going to lose it because you can see, look at all the dieback on the leaves. I've lost so many pseudobulbs on this. A lot of new growths would start and then abort. But finally, this one did mature a pseudobulb, and that pseudobulb put out a flower spike. And that flower spike had 3 blooms on it. One of them blasted, and then these 2 actually were the, the sole survivors. Now, I will say that this is a really important thing for you to know about orchids in general. Just because an orchid blooms does not mean it's healthy. This could be a last-ditch effort to survive. It could be a last-ditch effort to become pollinated and live on that way. But I do think that it's positive momentum because, again, the new growths have never matured into a pseudobulb. This is the first time that's ever happened. Now, I know it's not at its maximum health because when I bought this plant and it was super vigorous, it had a flower spike that had 5 flowers on it. So I know each inflorescence can produce up to 5 flowers. So the fact that it only gave me 3 to start is, an indicator of the overall health of the plant, but I do think it's on its way back. So I'm just gonna continue to monitor this. I do think that the conversion to water culture really helped because it made it more susceptible to temperature fluctuations because it needs that cooler temperature. And then I put it directly in the window, so as night temperatures progress in San Francisco, this cools down significantly, and I think that's really helped this plant. Jumping back in with number 51 in the collection, this is my white wedding day Phalaenopsis. This is the last of the 4 plants that comprise number 51 to still be in bloom, but just look how gorgeous it is. It's so funny how disparaging the orchid growing community can be to white Phalaenopsis orchids because, you see them everywhere and people think they're basic, but this one has brought me such unexpected joy. It is so happy and just, you can't beat the length of bloom. This has been in bloom now for almost 4 months. So I'm very pleased. I love it, and I'm gonna continue to love it. Now we're gonna jump to number 56 in the collection. This is a division of number 56. So this is the one that I put into water culture of my Miltonia sunset. Now the interesting thing is this die-off and this kind of spotting was happening when the plant was part of the mother plant, so pre-division. And I divided it and put it into water culture, and something interesting happened. The blooms that ended up opening on the mother plant came out spotted, so they actually sustained this narrative of kind of, I don't know if it's a nutrient deficiency or I don't know if it was just too high of light levels, but that burn translated to the blooms, but the water division one did not. So these ones opened perfectly happy, perfectly healthy, no spotting, no discolorations. So I think that's kind of peculiar and noteworthy. I don't know exactly what it means, but it is something that I want to observe and continue observing. And when I take you into the root system, it's interesting how well acclimated this has become. You can see it's put down a whole flush of roots, lots and lots of green root tips, but even in the water, off of the old root system that I thought was dying, it branched and started to really latch onto these glass marbles that I put in the bottom. And it's kind of unexpected. Across the board with my water culture experiments, I wouldn't have regarded glass marbles as potting medium, but the roots seem to regard them as potting medium because it's something that they can anchor onto. I think there is a big point of difference between just putting a plant in a glass container and putting a plant in a glass container with these beads because it gives the roots something to, snuggle into, latch onto, really grow around so that the plant can feel secure. And I think that security is so imperative for the health of the plant because if it feels like it's gonna wobble and fall, it's less likely to progress. So, I don't know, that's just a little bit of theory and philosophy behind it, but I'm just curious to continue observing how this one progresses. Now on to number 59 in the orchid collection. This is my Cloecia Rebecca Northern, and it's just sustaining the narrative of my Catacetum types doing really, really well. Look at the previous 2 growths. So tiny, so insignificant in compared to this year's growth. And I just used my same method. I will link the video below where I kind of show you how I use slow release fertilizer with my Catacetum types, but it seems to be very, very happy and very well adjusted. Now we're gonna jump to number 60. This is my Belara Peggy Ruth Carpenter. If you wanna see the full bloom, check out the bloom profile I already did for this one. But this one is just in a really great rhythm. It does the exact same thing every single time it spikes for me. It's so peculiar. This one does not seem to be bound by any particular cycle. It's just when it wants to grow, it grows. So you can see I have one that has just started to mature a pseudobulb here, and that is the one that has given me not 1, but 2 flower spikes. Now, without fail, it gives me 1 flower spike with just 1 bloom on it, and then it'll give me a full flower spike, which is this one down here. You can see there is another growth that's kind of in the middle of the road in terms of its development. It's getting closer to producing a pseudobulb, but that one is gonna give me flower spikes anytime, just like it did last year. And then as all of that happens, it's also producing a new growth down at the base. So this one just, it's just happy. It's just grateful to be here. It is so easy. I have to do so little to make this one produce the most stunning display of blooms. So, you know, number 60, I appreciate you. You're always so good to me. Now jumping to number 62 in the collection, this is my Cattleya Volcano Trick Paradise, and just get a load of these gorgeous blooms. They are so stunning. I did film a full bloom profile, which I will edit and post as soon as possible, but so uplifting, so joyful. Now people ask about this plant in particular all the time because of its expansive root system. I mean, just look at this. The aerial root system has gone insane. But it's not just the aerial root system, it's also the one in the container. It has completely enveloped the container. It is so well established in fact that I'm kind of nervous about how I will ever get this out of the container when it's time to repot. But it is such a beauty. It is doing so well. Now, people do seem to have strong opinions about this plant and my cultivation method for it. I actually got a particularly aggressive message from someone saying, you know, you're spreading misinformation and there's nutrient deficiency. It prefers to be grown in bark medium and it hates it. Please just switch your grow system. Now, I do want to say, please stop admonishing growers for their grow systems. What I'm assessing with my personal orchid endeavors is not what the plant's preferred grow method is. I'm assessing whether or not I am capable of growing them in my preferred grow method in my environment with all of the limitations that I have. Again, I'm a domestic orchid grower. I can't give these plants precisely what they want or what they would experience in the wild. So when looking at this plant through that lens, it appears, yes, you can grow in semi-hydroponics successfully and get the plant to bloom beautifully. And I think that this plant will be in bloom for quite some time. Actually, if I take you in closer, you'll see that there are a couple other flower sheaths that have already developed. And you can see the flower spike in this one particularly coming in quickly. So I think we'll see blooms from this one for quite some time. I'm very, very excited. It is so gorgeous. Now jumping to number 63 in the collection, this is my Restrepia cuprea. And this one is so interesting because I really thought it was about to die. I thought nothing good was happening for this plant. But then when I take you into it, do you see the new leaf it put out? And do you see that it's putting out another one? Right there. It's so interesting because they do say that sometimes when you see that purpling, from light exposure, specifically from light exposure, it can prompt new development of the plant. It can really signal to the plant, hey, it's time to put out some new vegetative growth. And it appears to be doing that. I also converted it to strictly water culture, which I thought for sure was gonna kill it, but it seems to be acclimating. So I'm not gonna make any sweeping generalizations about this plant. I'm just gonna continue to observe, but kind of interesting. Now on to number 66 in the collection. This is my Cattleya benosa, and also an unexpected story. This one has really acclimated nicely to water culture. Again, I just have that little layer of glass marbles in the bottom, and it looks like, I don't know if you can tell, the root system really did latch around those roots and really put down this entire system to establish itself in the water. But then it's also putting out this root system to establish itself in the air. Now, one of the things I've been talking a lot about lately is my belief that orchids are able to self-regulate. So what I mean by that is that if they do not have their ideal growing circumstances, they will leverage a combination of their aquatic root system and their aerial root system to find a healthy balance to kind of, I don't know, manipulate their environment to what they want it to be so that they can breathe properly exactly as they want to, and they can drink properly exactly as they want to. And this is a great example of that because first it invested in its aquatic root system, and now it is really investing in its aerial root system. Now, again, people have chastised me for this before, and they say, you know, if your plant was happy in that container, it wouldn't grow out of it. But I don't agree with that. Just from my personal experience with these plants, I really think that they are self-regulating. And if it hated the container so much, I just can't fathom that it would put down roots into the water system so effectively as a foundational step before it put out aerial roots. You know, it does seem to be symbiotic. They are working together synergistically to give this plant exactly what it needs. And that's evident because look who has a little flower spike coming in. I don't know if you can see it, but the sheath has already developed and there's a little flower spike inside. Now, another very successful water culture experiment has been number 67 in my collection. This is my Epidendrum rose hybrid. And again, I keep calling this one the ramen noodle because look at its root system in water culture. It really has just, especially the aquatic roots, not the ones in the air. Hold on, let me take you in closer. Look at that. It looks just like a dense brick of ramen noodles. It established so quickly and successfully into this grow method. And I wasn't exactly sure how it was doing until I started to see the flower spike. And it came out of nowhere and it developed so quickly, but it's giving me a fully realized flower spike. The color's already coming in. Now, Justin bought this plant for me when it was not in spike, so this will be my first time seeing it in bloom. And I couldn't be any more excited that it just took so quickly and easily to water culture because it's such an easy method to do it in. But I'm just so excited to continue monitoring the development of this plant because it just seems so happy. And it seems like there are more flower spikes on the way because you look at these other canes And they are all roughly at the same point that this one was right when it started to produce its flower spike. So I think we're close to seeing a lot more blooms. And with that, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much as always for choosing to spend your time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to support one another in the comment section because I'm so seldom available to do so. Don't forget to click subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Mwah! Bye, friends.